Hi, everybody. This is Sharon Rhodes, and today we're going to talk about emotions and your five senses. Now, the word emotion actually comes from a French term, the old French word meaning émouvoir, pronounced émouvoir, and it means to stir up. It comes from the 12th century. Now, emotions are energy in motion, emotion. You see, everything is a form of energy. And emotions are a form of energy. Now, Albert Einstein told us that energy cannot be destroyed, it can only change form. So, once again, this is not new age, this is old science that has come to fruition. Now, are there good emotions and bad emotions, or are there just emotions? Let's look at some examples. Anger, well, you might say that's a bad emotion. But if it prompts you to make needed changes to get a better job, to leave an abusive relationship, or to lose weight, or anything good, then that anger had a positive outcome. So was it negative or positive? Happiness, on the other hand, well, you would think happiness is a good emotion, right? However, research shows us that a person who is really extremely over the moon, happy all the time, may not be completely in touch with reality. In fact, they might disengage from reality. And that might lead to risky behaviors and dysfunction in certain areas of their life. So, the key is what we do with the emotions that we experience. How do we handle them? How do we keep them in check? And how do we release them in a healthy manner? And here is why it's important. You see, emotions are energy, we've said that, and energy has a frequency that can be measured. The cells of our bodies have energy, frequencies that can be measured. The healthy human brain, for example, has a frequency of between 72 and 90 megahertz. The human body over the course of a day, a healthy human body over the course of a day, has a frequency of between 62 and 68 megahertz. Now, foods have frequencies as well. Canned foods have zero frequency, 0 megahertz. Now, we're not talking about nutritional value, although canned foods don't have a lot of nutritional value. We're talking about frequencies here. Fresh produce has up to 15 megahertz, dried herbs 12 to 22, fresh herbs 20 to 27, and essential oils have 52 to over 300 megahertz. Now, traditional Chinese medicine has long understood that the energy of emotions can get stored in the cells of the body if they're not properly dealt with and released. For example, anger gets stored in the liver. The energy of anger gets stored in the liver. The energy of fear gets stored in the kidneys. The energy of grief gets stored in the lungs. The energy of worry gets stored in the spleen. So it's true that emotions buried alive never die, because we cannot destroy emotion. They just change form. Now, it's also important to know that illnesses or diseases can be measured in frequencies as well. The common cold measures 58 megahertz, flu 57 megahertz, candida 55 megahertz, Epstein-Barr 52 megahertz. Do you see how this is going down? Cancer measures at 42 megahertz, and death begins when the body reaches 24 megahertz. So you're beginning to see, for example, that when we experience the emotion of extreme grief and we fail to properly address it and release it, the energy of that emotion of grief can be stored in the lungs because the lungs have a similar frequency. That's how the body is created to function. The energy tends to create dis-ease in the lungs. That energy of grief tends to create dis-ease in the lungs. So the body works harder to bring itself back into balance or homeostasis. When it just can't do that, we experience symptoms of dis-ease, like breathing difficulties, respiratory illnesses, asthma, that type of thing in this example. Western medicine treats the symptom, and sometimes we need that. Yet we can address the root cause when we understand how our emotions work. Now, our Creator gave us 5 senses: taste, hearing, touch, sight, and smell. Now, this is pretty brilliant. Taste, touch, sight, and hearing all get processed through the frontal part of the brain, called the reasoning cortex, as you can see in this picture. That means we can actually think about one of those senses and then decide what response we're going to have. The sense of smell is different. It bypasses the reasoning cortex and goes straight to the amygdala, or the limbic part of the brain. That's also known as the seat of emotions. Let's look a little closer now at each of the 5 senses and how they can affect our emotions. We taste things, or sense taste, using receptors that are located within the taste buds, mainly located on our tongue. Each receptor has a very specific chemical sensitivity, and when activated, it triggers an impulse that goes to the frontal part of the brain. Now, here's an interesting study. Ice cream literally tasted more sweet to hockey fans whose team had just won a game, and fans whose team lost the game reported the ice cream tasted sour more acutely. Researchers suggest that this could help explain why some of us turn to food for emotional comfort. We all probably can relate to eating foods that aren't good for us when we're dealing with emotional stress. Probably those foods include sugar. Because when we're stressed, the body naturally goes into that fight or flight mode and starts burning calories faster. Sugar is the primary fuel for our body, although it's not the most effective. Fats are actually more effective, but they take too much time to produce the fuel that the body needs when it goes into that fight or flight syndrome. So we crave sugar because it has lots of calories and it gives us that quick energy. We instinctively know that sugar will give us the fuel that we need when we're in fight or flight or in an emotional upheaval. Sugar also causes the body to release endorphins. They're the feel-good hormones which makes us feel better. It's kind of like getting a great big old group hug. So now we know that our sense of taste may be affected by our emotional state, and we know why we crave the taste of sugar. We can use this knowledge to support our emotions with a little bit of sweets when needed, and then choose to address the emotion or emotions that are the root cause instead of eating the whole box of chocolates. Now, touch and emotion are deeply connected. Human touch evokes a sense of proximity, and it establishes the human connection, trust. It's so important. Think of a newborn baby and how she responds to her mother's touch. In one study, Dr. Dasher Keltner, a professor of psychology at UC Berkeley, and his colleagues separated 2 participants using a curtain. And then they asked one of those participants to communicate a variety of emotions by touching only the arm of the other participant. And then that other participant tried to identify the emotion being conveyed simply by the touch. Surprisingly, many emotions were correctly identified by touch alone, suggesting there's a very strong link between emotional communication and touch. Our skin is very vascular, so it responds to touch through vasodilation, which makes us feel warm and loved. Sometimes that warmth can be detected, even without physical touching, when we're in real close proximity to those who truly care for us. That's because different sensors of the skin can detect small and large surface changes or vibrations. And there's that frequency again that we've been talking about. Likewise, when we are emotionally upset Often just touching something can help us get those emotions in check. Some people like to twirl their hair, the sense of touch. Some people like to feel the feel of a soft blanket over them. Some stroke their family pet. Whatever the sense of touch is, it's very powerful when it comes to our emotions. Now, our eyes offer a window into our souls. According to a recent study published by the Psychological Science, we can interpret a person's emotions by analyzing the expression in their eyes. It works the other way too. When we look at something or someone we love, we see a picture of happy times, watch a sunset or a sunrise, or just see order among chaos. Those types of things that we see with our eyes often serve to give us a sense of things being right in our world and help us process and release emotions. Now, sound can be called a wave that touches, whether it's a voice, a song, a train whistle, or whatever the sound is. It is just waves of vibrating air that travel through space and time into our ears. Sound, which has frequency, can affect the frequency of our emotions as well. Music has a psychoacoustic effect on our emotions because it changes the activity in the frontal cortex of the brain. Healing with sound is believed to date back all the way to the ancient Greeks, when music was used in an attempt to cure mental disorders. Throughout history, music has been used to boost the morale of military troops, to help people work more productively, and to even ward off evil spirits by chanting. Remember when I said earlier that the sense of smell is different, the way it gets processed in the brain? It bypasses that reasoning cortex and goes straight to the amygdala or limbic part of the brain. I guess God knew that we needed to have one sense that would be processed by the brain differently, that we couldn't think about how we were going to react. Think about baked bread, or the smell of coffee, a certain cologne or perfume, even moldy leaves. Any aroma can trigger the release of a memories that we didn't even realize we still held on to. Now, here's a really cool fact. Many smells are synthetic, and while we may have come to accept them as nice, it's only when we smell a pure, natural aroma that we begin to recalibrate our olfactory senses, just like we recalibrate our taste buds. For example, if we drink only diet sodas, and then somebody gives us a glass of fresh squeezed orange juice, it's probably not going to taste very nice to us. But when we cleanse our palate and we recalibrate those senses, that sense of taste, that orange juice will taste wonderfully sweet. This very same thing happens with the sense of smell. So to bring this all home, let's just recap. Each of our senses can help calm us and help us face emotional distress. Taste, when we understand that a small amount of our favorite sweet or favorite food can help soothe our distress and give us time and the energy to face and release our emotions. The sense of touch, well, giving or receiving a tender caress, a hug, or just a shoulder rub or a foot rub from someone we love often calms us enough and reminds us that we can face those emotions and address them in a way that shows love, including self-love. The sense of sight. Well, we've all probably heard somebody say, "You're a sight for sore eyes." That means something is really a welcome sight. Looking at things that we find calming, soothing, or that invoke pleasant memories can help us deal with stormy emotions. Likewise, when every sound that we hear has a frequency, and those frequencies can uplift us, they can disturb us, they can anger us, they can calm us. So when we choose to listen to uplifting sounds, that too can help us process our emotions. And smell. Remember when I said the sense of smell bypasses the frontal cortex, the reasoning center of the brain, and goes directly to the limbic or amygdala part of the brain? This has a huge impact on how we process our emotions. You see, even though it might be lightning fast, the other four senses get processed through that reasoning cortex at the front part of the brain. That means we think about what we are sensing, and those thoughts might change how we react to those senses. Here's an example. If we're really, really, really angry at someone and they try to give us a hug, we can recoil and allow that touch to make us even angrier. When we smell something, however, we cannot predetermine how our brain will process that sense. It could trigger a memory, pleasant or not, that we don't even realize we're holding on to. Here's an example. I used to spend a lot of time when I was a kid at my grandparents' house on weekends. And my grandfather, we called him Daddy Yost, was quite a unique guy. Years after he died, when I first smelled clary sage essential oil, I immediately thought of Daddy Yost. I felt such a strong connection to him and the time that we shared together. And it made me feel so warm and fuzzy inside. Interestingly, I later opened that bottle of clary sage and gave it to my mom and sister, asked them to smell it and tell me who it reminded them of. They both said, I don't know. It did not remind them of Daddy Yost. And that's because there was a time long ago when Daddy Yost was using something that had clary sage in it. And I was with him and I stored that memory in the cells of my body until the day I opened that bottle of clary sage and the beautiful memories were released. You can experience similar things if you haven't already. Because when we store emotions, even when we stuff them and convince ourselves that we have forgiven and forgotten, because those emotions are energy and energy cannot be destroyed, it just changes form. A whiff of something can release that stored energy of emotion so that we can deal with it and let it go. Maybe someone said something hurtful to you when you were a child, and you just didn't have the ability, skills, or maturity to process that hurt. It's still there somewhere in your body. It could have caused anger, and that might have gotten stored in your liver. And you might be experiencing today less than an optimal liver function. It could have caused worry, fear, disappointment, or a feeling of abandonment or unworthiness. Whatever it caused, whatever emotion it caused, that energy of that emotion is still there if you didn't release it or change it into something that would serve your benefit. That's why I love essential oils. That's one of the key reasons I use them and teach about them, because they support our emotional health so directly. With essential oils, which essential oils, you might ask? Because of their specific frequency, some blends are specifically formulated to help us release emotions. Yet any essential oil can do that, just like clary sage did for me. Usually, when I think of clary sage, I think of it supports my endocrine system, not my emotions. Yet it certainly released a beautiful emotion for me that day. We have blends like Trauma Life, Release, Forgiveness that are so perfectly formulated to help us release emotions that no longer serve us. Now, back to witch oils. It's also really important to understand that purity matters. And that's why I use only Young Living essential oils, because they're the only company that has the seed to seal guarantee and promise of purity and authenticity. They have been producing essential oils, 100% pure essential oils, for over 25 years. Whatever emotions you are experiencing, it's important to remember a couple of things. As hard as it may be, there are others who have experienced the same emotions that you may be experiencing today. So you can reach out and connect with others to get help, to get support. If you are severely depressed, have thoughts of hurting yourself, please see a medical profession immediately. Your body is so much more than the physical part we see. It's created to heal itself. And in order to do that, we must do the things and give our bodies the things they need to find that balance called homeostasis. Essential oils can be a huge help because the molecules in the plants were created for our purpose by the same creator who created the cells of the body. That makes them bioidentical to our body. Our emotions are a very important part of who we are and who we are created to be. When we choose to face them and release the ones that no longer serve us, we will walk into living our best self and we will live our highest purpose. I hope this has helped. Thank you for listening today, and please share this with your friends. Have a great day.